Alright, for my new watchers and non-subscribers who haven't seen the other videos, this is Joe from St. Bernard Acres, and this is my 1992 Chevy G20 high-top conversion van. It's a Vantique conversion, and I'm going to convert it into a camper van. So what this video is the maiden voyage of it. And by maiden voyage, let me tell you, when I was in the Navy, I went in 1974, went to boot camp in Great Lakes, Illinois, and got out of boot camp, went to A school in Pensacola, Florida. I was a photographer. After A school, I was stationed aboard the USS Nimitz, the aircraft carrier. Now, when I got there in 1974, it still was in Newport News Shipbuilding Dry Dock Company in Newport News, Virginia. Its home port at the time was going to be Norfolk, Virginia. And man, it's a little chilly out. The ship was still being built. The Navy didn't even own it yet. And what I got to do was like help build it, and the Navy bought it. Then it had to go out for sea trials. Its maiden voyage. I got to take it out on its maiden voyage. And you know, long story short, now that it's too late to be short, I'm a plank owner. I commissioned the USS Nimitz. I was part of the commissioning crew, took it out for its sea trials, air trials, all those kind of things. So I'm looking at this as like, I'm taking it out on its maiden voyage because I bought this van for $300. And if you, let me show you real quick. That inspection sticker was done March of 2010 because it expired in March of 2011. And if you look at the oil change, if I can show that, it was due. I don't know if that's going to show up or not. I can't tell my viewfinder. In 2010, 11/11 of 2010, it was due for another oil change. So, that being said, and I'm going to go sit inside the van to finish the story because it's windy and it's chilly out here. I'll sit back here in the back. But this van, the more I've researched it and the more I found out, the last time it was driven was in 2010. So it sat in gravel, on gravel, for 9 years. Tires were all down. Obviously the battery was dead. So I bought it for $300 and had it towed home. So since then, what I've done to it is put on a set of tires. I put a new battery in it. Now mind you, I got advice from 100 different people that you had to do 100 different things. You got to drain the fuel tank, you got to drain this, you got to change this, you got to do all this before you even try to start it. So I'm like, okay, I know the value of these things. Now this had the center seats in it. I've taken them out. But when I opened the door and saw how clean this thing was, then I had to believe that whoever owned it, if they took this good a care of the interior, they took care of the motor too. I just went on that assumption. But with 123,000 miles on it, I figured for 300 bucks, if I had to put a motor in it, I'm still ahead of the game. It's just a 350. They're everywhere. And parts galore. So I took the chance. And like I said, I put tires on it, put a battery in it. And I did a video where I told my son, I was standing out there, I said, look, just see if the motor will crank. When I put the battery in, it's like, see if the motor will just crank, find out if it's even worth going through all this problems. Well, he turned the key, and it started. It was running. I had checked the oil. I knew there was oil in it, and it tasted like oil, so I figured it would be okay to start the motor. Like I said, it started right up with 9-year-old gas in it. Now, had this been a carbureted system, this has the throttle body injector, the fuel-injected engine. But with that throttle body, there was no gas in the carburetor to gum up or anything. So we got lucky there. And I'm telling you, the 350 is a bulletproof motor. They just go forever. So it started. I had him turn it off. And, you know, everybody had told me, drain the fuel out of it, do this, you know. I had a friend in Cincinnati tell me, just pour a can of seafoam in it. So I did. There was about a quarter of a tank fuel in it, so I added a bottle of seafoam to it. And then I changed the fuel filter. I changed the oil and the oil filter and the air filter. And I believe that's all I did. Then I started it and ran it. I had about 4 gallons of gas here, so I added 4 gallons of fresher gas to the gas tank. I started it and it ran, and it was like, wow, this is pretty wild, you know. And I backed it up out of the yard and then pulled it back in just to see if it would move. I didn't drive it or anything because the brakes didn't work. You know, the brake light was on, check engine light was on. So I'm like, okay, it's worth pursuing and continuing on. And the next thing I did, I bought brakes and calipers for the front and replaced the brakes and the calipers. The rotors were rusty, you know, had surface rust on them, but they were in good shape, so I didn't change them. I don't know if I have to yet or not. I didn't. But I may later. I may have to just sand them all down or something. But I did all that. We found out we had a brake line that had a hole in it, so I replaced the brake line. Bled the brakes. They work fine now. Little pull to the right, but I think that has to do with the rotor. I got to get in there and clean it or something. But when I did the oil and oil filter, air cleaner, and fuel filter, I replaced the thermostat because I wasn't getting any heat out of it. So I figured I had a thermostat that was stuck open or something. So I replaced that, and I started getting heat. I mean, that fixed that. But the temperature gauge wasn't working. I was getting good, oil pressure, and the amp meter was good. Those gauges worked, but the engine temperature didn't. So I bought a coolant temperature sensor and installed that. And surprisingly, the check engine light went out, but the temperature gauge still didn't work. So what I had done, I bought a aftermarket gauge. When I replaced the sensor, I also, while I was under there, I bought changed 8 plugs, the plug wires, the distributor cap, and the button. So basically did a tune-up on it. I replaced all those, and I bought an aftermarket gauge for the temperature. I was just going to run to that because I didn't want to take the dashboard apart, get in the engine cluster, work on that. So I just bought a temperature gauge I was going to install. And while I was, doing some research and everything, I found out there's another temperature sending unit called a switch. Okay, that has to be the coolant temperature sensor only sends a signal to the computer. You need the other sensor installed to send a signal to the gauge. So instead of putting on the temporary gauge, I bought a temperature switch, it's called, installed that, hooked it up, now my gauge works. So I've done all of that, everything works now, and now we're going to take it on a drive. Not far, because I don't know how the transmission's going to act. Just on general principle, I bought a can of Seafoam Trans Tune and poured in there just because, like I said, it has sat, not moved under its own power really for 9 years. And what you're about to see is when Gail and I took it on the road. I went through this part of town, got up on the freeway, drove a couple, 3 miles on the freeway, back off the freeway, and then around and back up to the house again. And I just wanted to see if the transmission would work, if it would stay running. It needed a little shakedown cruise before I take it out to St. Bernard Acres. But I did notice once the temperature gauge started working, it's running hotter than I want it to. It's not running hot, it's not getting overheated, but it should run around 190, and it's running around 220. So it's going in Monday. I'm not going to do it here because I don't have the means to collect all the water and everything. So I'm taking it into the shop Monday to have the radiator, the whole coolant system flushed. That's going to be the next step. I think that's part of it. Plus, I hadn't added any antifreeze or coolant. We lost some when we changed the thermostat. I lost some when I changed the coolant temperature sensor. And I lost a bunch more when I changed the temperature switch. And I never replaced that. So that may have added to the overheating. Not overheating, but the running a little bit hotter than it should. So, like I said, Monday it's going in for that. And then, one afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, maybe, Gary and I will head out to St. Bernard Acres and see what it does. But, anyway, this is the Maiden Voyage. This is the first trip on it that it's going down the highway in 9 years. I haven't changed any belts yet. I haven't changed any hoses yet. I saw a couple of vacuum lines I'm going to have to replace. I'm just going to buy a spool of vacuum hose and start, as I see vacuum lines, just start replacing them as I go and continue working on things. But she's running great. It's been I'm very surprised at how well it's running, considering the way it's sat, and I didn't have to do all the things that people told me to do. All the gauges are working now, and we're going to take her out for her test run. This will be the Maiden Voyage. I had to put a temperature switch in to get the temperature gauge working. The temperature coolant sensor evidently only sends a signal back to the computer, not to the gauge. So you also have to replace the temperature switch, they call it, or temperature sensor, which is a single wire that runs to this gauge here in the cluster. So that part is fixed. So I'm going to turn the camera over to Gail and we're going to go for a ride. The Maiden Voyage. This thing is a boat.
Should have cleaned the windshield.
I noticed that.
Because in the sun it's really dirty.
But if this works, I'll go wash it. Take it over to the car wash, give it a good cleaning. But now I just want to see how the transmission does. Change there. Change there. Because I'm going to fake it. Well, it's changing gears, so that's a good sign. Didn't expect to get stuck by this.
The city bus?
Yeah. Picking up a handicap, but they got to do it. Did he get in the seat or is he buckled? Oh, there he goes. I didn't want to go around him if he was getting ready to take off. Remind me, or when you go in, tell Ed I need him to call me.
All right.
So we can figure out why the brakes are kind of pulling to the left a little bit. I like the way it drives. Not too bad. Yeah. That's wheeling streets for you. Pickup too. And I don't want to push it too hard. So far, so good. That could be us. relatively quiet, you know that?
It is. It's better than it.
Once this cover and everything is back on, I think it's going to be quieter. So it's not too shabby.
Did you buy windshield wiper blades?
Yeah. Look at how tiny they are.
I know.
That was when I went to get them. I kept thinking these cannot be right. I don't have any washer fluid in there.
We got 3 gallons in the shed, and you didn't put any in?
No, I didn't think about it.
We'll go get some and put it in it, because I got to check mine in my level in my car too.
Charlie?
No.
Yeah, you were running down the alley.
Oh, okay.
Oh, this is yours.
I know.
But anyway, I hope you enjoy this video. Sorry it took so long, this intro, but I had to tell the stories and get everybody caught up on what I had done so far. Because I didn't video all of it. I just had fun with me and my friends doing this and making this a little project. We've had a blast with it so far. And I've also decided, since I'm not going to be living in this van, it's just strictly going to be for going on camping trips and stuff, I'm not going to strip all this out. This is so nice and so clean that I'm not going to tear it apart. The bed folds, you know, this seat folds down into a bed. It's all electric. I got that working. So why tear it all out? You know, it's going to work fine. I'll put in a little cabinet area and sink and stuff, but it's going to be removable. When I'm done with it as a camping van, I can put the seats back in it, take all the stuff out I've done, and it'll still be a super nice conversion van. So that's the story on it so far. I hope you enjoy this trip, and we'll be keeping you posted. Thank you all for watching.